Okay, let us start recalling that we were looking at Green's theorem and its applications. We proved various forms of Green's theorem, so let me just recall them. The standard form of Green's theorem, if you have got a vector field which is pi plus qj in the plane and C is a curve which is oriented clockwise, then it can be represented in terms of double integral. So R is the region enclosed by C. That is the standard form of Green's theorem. Then we had the flux form of Green's theorem. So the flux form of the Green's theorem is in terms of G dot n, that represents the outward flux, right, in the direction of the unit normal, outward unit normal, where C is the closed curve, and this is given by the double integral of the divergence. So that is called the flux form, flux across C. Then we had the work form, so work done in moving along the curve, or this is also called sometimes the circulation of F along the curve C. That is, the work form is given in terms of curl of F dot K, and if we represent T ds in terms of dr, that is called the curl form of Green's theorem. So the main reason for stating these theorems is, of course, they find use So take your seats quietly, please. So main, I said, use of these theorems, these forms of Green's theorem is that it finds applications. We'll soon see it. Another reason is that in the way that we have written the flux form, and the, so this is the flux form. In this form as well as in the curl form, Green's theorem extends to R3. So we'll soon see that in R3 the extension of the curl form and the flux form, they are called Stokes theorem and Gauss divergence theorem. So they are very important theorems. So they extend in this form to R3 also. We'll see it in the remaining lectures. Let us look at some applications of Green's theorem, and which are called Green's identities, which are very useful in applications of various physical problems. Let us just recall, we had defined what is called the Laplacian of a function, right? The Laplacian of a scalar field phi, of a scalar field f, is defined as partial derivative, second partial derivative with respect to x plus partial derivative with respect to y, plus of course partial derivative with respect to z if f is a function of 3 variables. But here we are looking at only function of 2 variables. So that is called the Laplacian. So of course we are going to assume that the function f has got second order partial derivatives exist. Otherwise this thing will not make sense. So let us take a scalar field w, which has this property, second order partial derivatives exist, and let me take the vector field f to be equal to minus partial derivative of w with respect to y, that is the first component, plus partial derivative of w with respect to x. I want to apply Green's theorem to this vector field. So once we apply Green's theorem to this vector field, what will be the right hand side, the double integral? There will be partial derivative of this minus the partial derivative of that over the region enclosed, right? So let us apply that. So that is nothing but the Laplacian actually. So let us see the Laplacian of w. I can write it as partial derivative with respect to x, right? Minus, I have put the minus sign inside here. Okay? So the Laplacian, which is the second order partial derivative of w with respect to x plus second order partial derivative of w with respect to y, is written in this way. Now I can apply Green's theorem here and write this in terms of line integral. So in terms of line integral, where C is the boundary of the region R, in the anti-clockwise direction, this is given by, right, direct application of Green's theorem to this vector field f. Now this one we'll write in terms of the normal. So let us write in terms of the normal. So dx by ds, dy by ds into ds. and that I can write as a dot product. This is outward normal. This is the outward normal for the curve. The parameterization of the curve is RS, where arc length parameterization we have taken. So this is the unit outward normal, and this is what is the gradient of W. So gradient of W dot n, what does that signify? Functions of several variable. Gradient of phi dot a vector u, that is the directional derivative of that right field, right scalar field along the direction of that vector u. So this is, we write this as del W by del n. This denotes the directional derivative of W in the direction of the outward unit normal. Okay, so this relates the two things. One is the directional derivative along the direction outward unit normal n with integral of the Laplacian. So this is a two-dimensional object being integrated. This is a one-dimensional object to be integrated. Right? Now this equation written this way is known as Green's first identity. That is okay, but it has very nice application. So for example, supposing that the derivative of W along the direction n is equal to 0, directional derivative of the scalar field on the boundary along the direction of the unit normal everywhere is equal to 0. So we are specifying a property of W on the boundary that will say that the integral of the Laplacian is equal to 0. Integral is over the whole thing inside, right? So that is a very nice application of Green's first identity. It says if the directional derivative of the scalar field W on the boundary in the direction of the unit normal is 0, then the integral of the Laplacian is equal to 0. And it is a very nice applications in physical applications. We'll see, probably you will see it later on in your courses, but we'll give you one more application of this. Let us also write for the scalar field W. W is a scalar field, partial derivative in the direction of n, that is a, what is that thing? That is a vector or a scalar? Directional derivative. Directional derivative of a vector field along a direction u, what is it? Is a scalar. So this is a scalar valued function. So this is a scalar valued function again. Okay. This one we write it as the directional derivative is the gradient dot n, right? But that I can write as half of del W square dot n, right? Del W square, when you differentiate, right, you will be getting 2 times. So same thing. Okay, so it is 1 half. So this thing. So this gradient, this quantity is written as del of W square dot n. The idea is the following. Now let us apply Green's theorem to this. So what is this equal to? So this will be equal to 1 half of dot n. Okay. Now let us write, this is a vector field. Okay, dot n. So G dot n. So flux form of the Green's theorem is applicable to this. So we apply the flux form of Green's theorem here. So what do we get? This will be represented as a double integral over R, divergence of G, right? Integral of G dot n was equal to integral of double integral of divergence. That is a flux form of Green's theorem. So that gives you divergence of this. Let us expand what is divergence of this thing. Those identities that we have done. Divergence of W is a scalar, gradient is a vector. Okay, so when you expand, it looks like a product kind of thing. So that gives you, but if you expand this, that gives you divergence. So divergence will, first one will give you del W dot del W. Okay, so that is norm del square, and the second one will give you W divergence applied to del, that gives you del square W, like the product rule. So we are using one of those identities that you had proved in the first few lectures when we started vector calculus. The divergence of F scalar field into a vector field, it looks like a product, right? Product rule being applied. So this is a product rule. So this gives you another equation which relates the directional derivative with gradient square and Laplacian. Here the Laplacian of the vector field W is entering into picture. For example, let us suppose, what is the importance of this kind of thing? Supposing W is a function, is a scalar field, which has a property, its Laplacian is equal to 0. Supposing W is a vector field, whose Laplacian is equal to 0. Such functions play an important role in physical applications. These are called harmonic functions. A scalar field W whose Laplacian is equal to 0, which satisfies that partial differential equation del square fx plus del square, right, partial derivative with respect to y second derivative plus partial derivative with respect to z is equal to 0. If they satisfy that equation del square f is equal to 0, that f is called a harmonic function. So suppose W is a harmonic function, then this quantity will be 0. Okay, so what will give me? It will give me that this integral of this W times directional derivative along n is equal to norm of the gradient square. Now, one property that W is harmonic, and second, assume its directional derivative along n is equal to 0 on the boundary. So second assumption. Then what will that give me? That will give me the double integral over R of the, right, of the norm square is equal to 0. But that is a non-negative function, right? Norm square is a non-negative function. Its integral is equal to 0. What will that imply? That means that the function must be identically equal to 0. But this identically equal to 0 on R. So you see the importance of this result. You are saying for a harmonic function, if the directional derivative on the boundary along the outward normal is equal to 0, then its gradient is also equal to 0 inside the domain R enclosed by the simple closed curve. And what does that mean? If we know that if the gradient is equal to 0 and if your domain is nice, for example, any two points can be joined by lines parallel to the axis, that will imply W must be identically equal to 0. So if your domain is nice, function is harmonic, then it says that a property that the directional derivative on the boundary is equal to 0 implies the function is identically 0 inside the domain also, right? So such kind of functions arise. For example, in a heat equation, you will find a function is harmonic, and along the direction of the normal, if you measure the temperature, right, that is equal to 0, then the temperature inside must be 0 everywhere. So determining some property, observing something on the boundary of the curve gives you a property of the function inside the domain. So these are properties of harmonic functions. Yes?
But the gradient is 0 like the function is constant inside the domain.
Pardon?
The gradient is 0 like the function does not change its identity. It is equal to some constant.
Need not be equal to? I am not saying 0, constant. It should be a constant. Okay? But if you know the value at some point on the boundary, it is 0. Right? So if you are approaching, if your vector field is continuous, you are approaching the boundary, on the boundary the value is 0. That means, okay, it's a constant. So value should be 0 everywhere. That is what I am saying. If you know something on the, or even if you know at one point inside, right, then you will know the value everywhere because it is a constant function. Right? Essentially saying it is constant. You can determine it everywhere by knowing the value at one point. Okay? So that is the idea of this. Basically harmonic functions are very useful in that way. Something on the boundary is given and you are able to determine something inside the domain. Right? So more of this you will see in your later courses. So let me not go much into this. So this is called a harmonic function. So it says if the directional derivative is 0, then the integral of the gradient will be, norm square will be 0. That will be a non-negative continuous function. That will imply the function must be 0 in R. And hence if the domain is nice, then W will be a constant scalar field. Okay. So this is the property of a, okay, along the unit normal is 0, then it is a constant function in the region enclosed. So you see Green's theorem, basically the important thing is it relates the line integral on the boundary with something inside, right, inside the domain, the double integral of the relevant function inside the domain. So this is in two dimension analysis of integrals in two dimension, line integral with the double integral. We would like to carry over this idea in 3 dimension now. Okay, so correspondingly in one dimension, for one dimension it was curves. Basically you are looking at line integrals of scalar fields over curves, right? So in the next higher object you can think of higher dimension is a surface, right? A vector field from R1 to R3, that is a curve. From R2 to R3 you can think of, that is what is going to be called a surface. But if you recall, we had defined surfaces also when we were looking at functions of one variable also, right? We said a function z is, or two variables, z is equal to fxy, that gives you a surface, right? At a point xy in the domain, the height, that gives you a surface. But now we are going to look at surfaces in general. Those are special kinds of surfaces where z can be explicitly computed in terms of x and y, but that may not be always possible. So a implicit relation between three variables x, y and z will determine a set of points in R3 that is going to be called a surface. So let us look at what are called surfaces. So a surface in R3 is going to be a set of points x, y, z, so that for a scalar field f x, y, z is equal to c, a constant. You can think it as a function of three variables. W is equal to f x, y, z. If you want to visualize a function of three variables, how will you try to visualize? You can't be visualizing its graph in 4 dimensions. So you have to look at what are called level surfaces. W equal to a constant, right? So that is what we are putting, W equal to a constant, a c. So a function of three variables, right? Normally this is also called a level surface for the function f, or we'll just call it as a surface determined by the function f. Okay, so it is a set of points x, y and z, so that f x, y, z is equal to a constant. Let us look at some examples of these things. First one is called very simple one, namely a very simple object in R3, which is a kind of xy plane, yz plane or zx plane, but not necessarily same, rotated and lifted. So that is the equation of a plane. A plane is called a surface, right? So its relation, it is normally given by fx, yz is equal to ax plus by plus cz, right? Why it is called a linear surface? Because this x, y and z, this relation f is a linear relation. So this is why it is called a linear surface. This equal to a constant will give you a plane in R3. Okay, so that is called a linear surface. Let us look at, so this is a plane, ax plus by plus cz equal to a constant. So that is a plane. Let us look at the next hierarchy, that is called quadratic surfaces. So fx, yz need not be a linear function, it is a function of degree, it is a polynomial of degree 2, right? So what is a polynomial of degree 2? In variables x, y and z will look like x square, constant times x square plus constant times y square plus constant times z square plus dot so many terms, right? So let us write, so a function will look like ax square plus by square plus cz square plus dxy exz fyz gx hy iz plus j, right? A polynomial of degree 2. That's why this is called a quadratic polynomial, okay? And fx yz is equal to a constant will give you a surface that is called a quadratic surface in R3. So a level surface for this function is called a quadratic surface because the function is a quadratic function. So they are all real numbers. So this second order equation is, so this is called a quadratic surface where fx yz is given by that. Let us look at some special cases of the quadratic surfaces. Fx yz is equal to just x square plus y square. All the remaining coefficient of z square, x, y, yz, all of the remaining things are, all coefficients are all 0. So only left with x square plus y square, right? K equal to some a square. So you got x, y, z, so that x square plus y square equal to a square. We have already seen this quadratic surface. That is a cone, cylinder. Z is free. Z could be anything, right? So that is a circular cylinder because the base is a circle. You could have here a ellipse, right? That will be called elliptic cylinder. You can have a parabola, a parabolic cylinder or parabolic sheet, you can call it. Okay? Sphere, that is again a quadratic surface. X square plus y square plus z square equal to, okay, k square. K is equal to a square. So sphere. Let us look at a variation of the sphere, that is ellipsoid, right? These all we have seen it while doing functions of several variables. Ellipsoid, x square over a square plus y square over b square z square over c square equal to 1, right? Yes? Okay, so that is quadratic surface called ellipsoid. Here is something totally different from them. Look at the surface fx yz is with a negative sign in between thrown here now, right? So what does it look like? It doesn't look like an ellipse now anymore. sections will be look like. They are hyperboloids, and this one is called a hyperboloid of one sheet, because at some point it is like you have seen that what is called damrus that Madari is having in their hand. That is the shape of this object, right? It is a curved kind of a cylinder like this, right? And there is one single thing going around, so it's called hyperboloid of one sheet. But you can also think of upper something and lower something, they are not touching at all. That is called hyperboloid of two sheets. So many such surfaces are possible. I will strongly say that because all of you know how to use internet, just in the Google search engine put quadratic surfaces, right? And once you have gotten hits in the down below, search within, there is a button called search within those hits. There you put animations. You will see many sites which give animations of these surfaces, right? So if you like, you can go and try to visualize. They give you various sections, okay? If you take a plane perpendicular to xy plane, how the sections look like, and so on. So that will help you to visualize these surfaces. So you can use internet nicely to visualize these surfaces. Okay, these are called hyperboloids of one sheet. Okay, so let us come back to it's like normally in all functions the VIPs come late. And whenever VIPs come late, they are clapped. The VIPs think it is in their honor that you are clapping. Actually, it's the other way around. Come back to our examples of surfaces. We have surfaces which are called linear surfaces. Please come back. Then we have quadratic surfaces. Also, let us try to see surfaces which we have seen earlier, namely graph of a function of two variables. So let us look at a surface S. Please, let's not repeat the fun part too often because it spoils the atmosphere also. So graph of a function of two variables. F is a function of two variables. So its graph is going to be a subset of 3 dimensions. So x, y, z, where z is equal to fxy. You can also write it as fxy minus z is equal to 0. So it is a function capital Fxyz equal to fxy minus z is equal to 0. It is again of the same type, a function of 3 variables, a level surface for a function of 3 variables with z is equal, with constant equal to 0. So that is a graph of. Right. Now this graph of the function of two variables, after all it is a point in R3, right? A point in our surface is a point in R3. So we should be able to say what is the x component, what is the y component, what is the z component of that, right? So if you are looking at the graph of a function, what is the x component? What is the x component of the function? Right, x. What is the y component? Y. What is the z component? Z is equal to fxy. So we can write the vector rxy, which depends on x and y, xi plus yj plus fxy, that is zk, where x and y vary inside the domain of the function. So this is the vector form or vector representation of the function. This also is called what is called the parameterization of the surface. So for a surface, like for a curve, to describe a curve as points, either we can describe its path, right, as an object, geometric object in R3, or we can describe by a formula that a point u comma v goes to a point x uv, y uv and z uv in the plane. Okay, so that gives you what is called a parameterization of a surface. So let us write the definition. A function r, okay, of two variables taking values in R3. That's why I said a surface is an x higher dimensional object compared to the curve. Okay, so it is a function of two variables taking values in R3. So that is the x component, x uv, y component, z component, u and v vary in d. So you can think it as in the uv plane, UV plane, that is some domain is given which is being transformed by the functions xuv, yuv and zuv, right? A transformation. Like for a curve, a interval, a point, right, that goes to a point in R3. Okay? So that is called a parameterization of a surface. So let us look at our standard examples, and this x, y, z, these are called coordinate functions, right, or the component functions for the surface. Like in one way for the curves, x component and the y component. Okay? So we'll say a surface is smooth if all these functions x, y and z are functions of two variables, they are all smooth functions, right? And we will say our surface is a smooth surface. So the component functions are smooth. So let us look at the plane. So geometrically it is described as ax plus by plus cz is equal to d. I want to give a parameterization to this. That means I want to describe it as a function of, in terms of functions of two variables, as the image of a function of two variables, right? So this is a relation between three variables. So any two of them you can determine in terms of a third one, right? So depending on whether A is 0, B is 0, C is 0, whichever case may be, you can write, for example, supposing C is not equal to 0, then Z can be written as Z is equal to A by C plus B by C y, right? You can write, so that Z is equal to fxy essentially. So we will have that parameterization xi plus yj, right? You can determine Z in terms of the remaining, so d by c minus that k xy belonging to R2. So that will be a parameterization of the surface, which is the plane. Okay? Here we assume C is not equal to 0, depending on other possibilities. For a sphere, if you recall, for a sphere x square plus y square plus z square equal to a square, we had many ways of describing a sphere. You can describe it in terms of cylindrical coordinates. You can also define it in terms of spherical coordinates, right? Here r is fixed, r is equal to a square. So r is equal to a. So when you are writing spherical coordinates, only the angle phi, which is the angle between the z axis and that position vector, and on the projection, the polar angle. So theta and phi, only two components will be there. So instead of the theta and phi, you can describe the spherical coordinates for a point on the sphere, or cylindrical coordinates, right? Z is free, right? Z is equal to, goes from, Z goes, in the cylindrical coordinates, what will be the formulation for this sphere? Z goes from bottom to the top, theta is the inside thing, right? The projection onto the xy plane. So you can write either way. So I'm just writing those, this is the spherical coordinates, okay? Rho is bigger than 0, but here rho is equal to 1 actually. So cos phi is the angle, theta and phi. You can also write, sometimes some people prefer to write that angle either is from the z-axis from 0 to pi, or they write from x-axis minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. Depending on which way you measure, your correspondingly those functions in terms of phi will change, right? You can change phi to phi minus pi by 2. Then instead of 0 to pi, it will be minus pi by 2 to pi by 2. So depending on your choice, you can have it. Then the elliptic cylinder, let us look at that. We had a circular cylinder, now we have got an elliptic cylinder. So what will be the parameterization for that? Cylindrical coordinates essentially we will be using. Z is free, right? X and Y are related by this equation, right? So you can put X is equal to 2 cos theta, Y is equal to sin theta, theta between 0 to 2 pi, Z is free. Theta and Z will give you the parameterization for this. Okay? So that is a parameterization for the surface. Okay. Now this is a surface, a parameterization is a function of two variables taking values in R3, right? So you can fix one coordinate at a time for this function, RUV. You can fix U, then it becomes a function of the other variable V. If you fix V, it becomes a function of the variable U. What kind of objects you will get? As functions of one variable, there will be curves on that surface, right? Function of one variable taking values in R3. So there will be curves. So these are called coordinate curves for the surface. When fix one of them, okay, they are called coordinate curves for the surface. What is the use of these coordinate curves? We will see it soon. One way is that if you know the parameterization and if you know the coordinate curves, that help you to visualize the surface. these coordinate curves, right? Essentially you are moving along that if your u is fixed, right, only v is varying. So you at u fixed, what you are looking at is the sections of, right, along that vertical line, u is fixed, only v is varying. So in the domain, along that vertical line, how is the curve, how is the surface looking like along that? What is the image along that line, right? So if you know various coordinate curves, right, you can try to put them together and try to visualize the surface. That is how actually animation in computer graphics is done, right? All those animations you will see in the internet if you go, what they do is they look at lot of these coordinate curves and try to put them together in a fast manner so that you are not able to see whether it is sort of a movie going on or a picture being shown to you, right? So that is basically called programming, how to program it and show it effectively. So these are coordinate curves. Let us look at one example. Let us look at the surface S, which is given by u cos vi plus u sin vj plus u of k, uv belonging to R2. Right? So this is a parameterization given. Let us look at the coordinate curves for this surface. So let us fix one of the variables. Supposing you fix u0, okay? So it is a function of v only. So u0 cos vi plus u0 cos vj plus u0 of k. So what does it look like, this curve? What is this curve? u0 cos v, okay? Oh, there is a mistake here, right? That should be u0 sin v j plus u0. u0 is fixed, z coordinate is fixed, so it is going to be a curve in that plane, right? Z is equal to u0, and what is that curve? Is given by u0 cos v, u0 sin v, so that is a circle. So all this you can think it as sections perpendicular to z axis of that surface, they are all circles, right? As u0 becomes larger, the radius becomes larger. As u0 becomes smaller, the radius becoming smaller. Clear? So there are circular sections becoming larger and larger. Now let us look at the other one. v0 is z is equal to u0, so radius or circle of radius u0. And now let us v0 is fixed. So u cos v0, u sin v0, and u. What does it look like? Is a parametric equation of a straight line. Is a parametric equation of a straight line at some angle v0, right? At some angle v0. So they are lines, right? Now you can try to see, and all these lines, do they pass through origin? Yes. So these curves are lines passing through origin, right? So vertical lines passing through origin, and those are circles. So now you can try to visualize what is your surface. Looks like a cone, right? So that is what it says. This is what. So these are the circular ones, and these will be the lines passing through the origin. That's how you try to visualize, right? Either they are called U trace and the V trace, depending on a person in computer science is doing it, he'll call it a U trace and a V trace when U is fixed or V is fixed, right? We'll call it coordinate curves for mathematics point of view. So they help you to visualize, and they also help you to calculate things now. Okay, so let us see how it helps you to calculate. Supposing you are given a surface, okay? In function of several variables, we found what is called the normal to the surface at a point. If the function is fx, yz is equal to constant, right? That is a surface. At a point, if you want to draw a normal to the surface, we saw that it is given by the gradient vector, that, right? So we want to know in terms of the gradient vector and in terms of the parameterization, what is the relation? Supposing the surface given by a function fx, yz is equal to a constant, also given by a parameterization, uv going to ruv, then is there any relation between the gradient and this function ruv, right? Now when you fix one of the variables, this is a curve on the surface, right? The coordinate curves, we fix one of the variables, say u is fixed, then v going to ruv, where u is fixed, is a curve on the surface, right? And what is the property of that normal? That is perpendicular to the tangent to this curve, right? What is normal? Normal is perpendicular to tangent to every curve at that point. That is how we define the normal to be. So in particular, the gradient vector is also normal, is also perpendicular to this, is also perpendicular to the tangent to the one coordinate curve, also to the other coordinate curve, to both. So you got two coordinate curves, u going to RUV, v going to RUV. So these are two curves on the surface, and the gradient is perpendicular to both of them, right? So can I say what is that gradient now in terms of the tangent vectors to these two curves? That must be the cross product. So I have to know only these two vectors to know the gradient vector in terms of, so look at RUV as a function of one variable at a time, take their partial derivatives, that at that point, that gives the tangent vector to the curves, right? And the gradient should be perpendicular to these two tangent vectors. That means the gradient is equal to plus minus, only the directions may change, cross product of RU with RV, right? So that is actually our next theorem, which says if S is a surface given by fx, yz is equal to C, which is smooth with parameterization RUV, v, u and v belonging to D, then a unit normal vector, the gradient is given by plus minus RU cross RV, because it is going to be the cross product. So a normal vector will be, right, RU cross RV divided by the norm of RU cross. Is the proof okay for everybody? We have already proved it as one function of two variables. If you want to see the proof again, let us do the proof again. Okay? So what will be the proof? Look at the specific curve when u is fixed. Then that coordinate curve is on the surface. So it must satisfy the equation fx, yz is equal to C. Right? So f of x uv, comma y uv, comma z uv equal to a constant. You can differentiate it with respect to u with respect to v. Right? That's what we did. That proof, same proof I am repeating only. Okay? So when you do those, you get two equations, and that means that it is perpendicular to the, so f of this is equal to 0. Differentiate, that is gradient is perpendicular to RU, also perpendicular to RV. That is what we said. It is perpendicular to the tangent to the RU curve, also perpendicular to the RV curve. So it is perpendicular to both, so it must be nothing but RU cross RV with a plus minus sign. So that proves that it must be one of plus minus sign, that thing. So that proves the theorem, and that is a unit normal vector. Right. For a curve, the first thing we did was how to find the length of a curve. Right? Now we got a surface, so we would like to find out what is the area of a surface. Given a surface, what is its area? How do we define the concept of area for the surface? So the idea for defining the area of the surface is the following. Let us look at intuitively. This is a UV plane, right? And here is the surface. So that is the surface S. Some domain D, okay, that goes to, this is the surface S we have already written, right? So this function is RUV. I want to find its area. So the idea is, whenever, this is what we have been doing till now, whether length or area or anything, we take a small piece of that object and try to find its, approximate its area, and then try to do the whole thing. So let us take a small portion of the domain, which is a rectangle here, okay, of length, say delta U and delta V. This will get transformed, right? So this will look like here, something like, okay, this is an image of this rectangle, okay. Now what I can think is, when this is very small, okay, I am going to, I want to move in this direction delta U, and in this direction delta V. So if this is a corner, in this direction I want to move, and in this direction I want to move, right? So I want to, when you want to move in this direction, which is a variable which is fixed, V is fixed, you are looking at a one coordinate curve. When you are moving along that, you are looking at the other coordinate curve. So you know how much you are moving in this direction and how much you are moving in this direction for a small distance. So what will be this, if this is in the U direction, so what will be this portion? Rate of change, that is RU, right? How much distance you are moving? Delta U. You can think this vector is given by this. And similarly along the other one, so direction will be RV, and delta V is the distance you are moving. So you can think, when this is very small, you can think this image as a parallelogram with length RU delta U and other side being RV delta V. Then what is the area of this parallelogram? If you know vectors U and V, what is the area of the parallelogram? That tells you is the cross product, absolute value, right? Norm of that cross product. So that gives you norm of RU cross RV, delta U, delta V is the area of this small portion. If you want the whole of it, you divide into smaller portions, then you should be integrating, right? This is du, dv, integral over u and v. Is that okay? Intuitively it's clear what we are doing. So instead of going into all this, intuitively we say that if you know the parameterization for the curve u going to RUV and RU, RV are continuously differentiable functions, then the surface area is given by the double integral of norm of RU cross RV, which is nothing but the normal vector, right? RU cross RV du dv. That should be defined as the surface area for the, right, area of the surface. So let us write that as a definition. Okay, so that is, I have moved much ahead actually what I wanted to do. There is an example here, I think that you can read yourself. This is a simple one, z is equal to fxy. What will be the normal for, let us anyway compute. For z is equal to hxy, the curve, the surface is given explicitly, z explicitly computable in terms of x and y. I can write as fxyz is equal to hxy minus z is equal to 0. So what will be the unit tangent vector or unit normal vector? Find the gradient. So what is the gradient? hxi. Is it okay? So what will be the unit norm of that? If you want, you can also calculate it RU cross RV. Okay? Let us compute RU cross RV and see both ways it comes out to be same. This is a gradient. Okay, we normalize. So it will be this divided by 1 plus hx square plus hy square root. Let us compute RU cross RY from here. So xy, right, partial derivatives 1, 0, hx. Similarly the other one, RU cross RV, that will be the determinant, that will be the same thing. Right? You can write either way you like. So this is a unit normal when it is given explicitly. Z is equal to hxy, right? In that, so hx and hy, h and x functions are going to be computed. So now let us come to that surface area. So this is what I said, that for a surface given by a parameterization R, assuming it is a smooth surface, that means the function Ru, Rv as functions of one variable, right, are continuously, component functions are continuously differentiable. Then Ru cross Rv will be a continuous function. Norm, that is again a continuous function. So this double integral will make sense, right? For that reason, only we are putting that condition of smoothness. So for a smooth curve given by a parameterization, we define the surface area to be equal to this. And what is intuitively why we define it that way? That we have already explained to you, that you take a small portion in the UV plane, see how it deforms. You can say approximately it looks like a parallelogram. Find the area of that. So that is essentially this delta U delta V, and total of that you want to find out. Okay. Yes? Okay. So let us go over quickly that portion. So that is what I have explained here, and that is the area. Okay. Now one thing is there, of course, to compute this area, like for a curve also, we made some assumption that the curve was a regular curve to make computations possible. So what was the meaning of the regular curve? Norm of r prime t was not equal to 0 at any point. So similarly, if you want to say that this is a surface area and you are going to integrate this function, right? This function should not be identically equal to 0, right? Actually, we will say that at no point it should be equal to 0. Okay, because we want to normalize it also. Okay, at every point you want to define and make it a unit normal. So at no point it should be equal to 0. So such surfaces are going to be called regular surfaces. Okay, so we'll assume that this condition is 2 onwards, that all our surfaces have that property that Ru cross Rv is nowhere 0 inside the domain where you are looking at the surface. So let us find out the standard examples. Sphere. Okay. By this method, let us find out what is the area, surface area of the sphere of radius a. So I can use parameterization to be spherical parameterization, spherical coordinates u and v. u goes between 0 to 2 pi, v, the angle goes between 0 to pi. Compute the partial derivatives, find the determinant, okay. So Ru, Rv, compute that, cross product of that, so that is the determinant, okay. So compute I component, j component, k component, and then find out the norm of that, right. So once you compute, so cross product, this will be 0, this will be a square, right, a cos u, cos v, cos square v will come. So this computation you do, compute this determinant, which will come out to be something times I, j and k. Now you want to normalize it, so find the norm of this, and you find the norm square actually, okay. So that actually I should be writing here norm square, this square plus this square plus this square is a square, a4 cos square v, so norm will be a square cos v, okay, this square should be there, okay. And now you can put in the formula a square cos v integrate, right, uv, u is the angle that is 0 to 2 pi, v, right, v is the angle between the z axis, that is 0 to pi, compute that 4 pi a square. So that only gives us a consolation that whatever formula we have put intuitively by looking at the heuristic considerations, that a small piece transforms like a parallelogram, all that thing at least does not give you any inconsistency. The standard things, yes, so we are on the right track, our formula, our definition is a right definition because it matches at least with the example of sphere, okay. So for example like this, parabolic cylinder, the base is a parabola, z-axis is going, okay. So let us write the base to be something, say y equal to x square, z between 2 and, okay, between the planes, z is equal to 2, and in the first octant, z equal to 2 and y equal to 1 by 4, right. First octant, 3 planes are already given, z and then y, okay. So what you will do, you write first, the first and the foremost thing is to write a parameterization for the surface, right. So y equal to x square, you can take x as the x and y, okay. So z is arbitrary, is cylinder, z is free, so you can take x, represent y in terms of x, and z is free, right. So it is xi, z is free, so zk, y is equal to x square, so that is a parameterization for the circle, for the parabolic cylinder. X, y belong to R. What is R? You have to find the region R where x and y are, x and z are going to vary. Z is given to be between 0 and 2. Only you have to find where is x going to vary, okay. X varies from 0 to 1 by 4. So let us write that, right. X goes 0 to 1 by 2, y goes to 0 to 1 by 4, so x goes to 0 to 1 by 2, z goes between these two, so that is the region in which x and z are going to vary. Parameterization you know, so you can write down the area. So write down the area, Rx, compute Rz, and from there find the unit normal, Rx cross Rz, compute that, take the absolute value of that and write down, so this is absolute value, square root, and find out thing. I think something is missing, square root is missing, so compute that anyway. So the basic idea is to find the surface area you need a parameterization, that is important. Same as for curves, to do any computation about curves you need a parameterization of the curve. Same thing for a surface, to find surface area you need a parameterization for the surface. So that was when actual parameterization is given. Now supposing the curve is given in the explicit form, z is equal to fxy, then we know a very nice parameterization is x, y, and z is equal to fxy. So I can write a parameter rxy equal to xi plus yj plus, instead of z I will write fxy, okay, and I will compute the unit normal and put the value of that unit normal there. So for the explicit form, as we have already done it actually, the normal we have computed, so I have just written it again, it is 1 plus, so this is the surface area, right. Again R, what is R here now? R is the domain of the function h, right. Z is equal to hxy, xy belonging to D. You can also think it is a projection of the surface onto the xy plane. If you are able to get a projection, then you can write the surface explicitly. If you know the projection, xy in the projection and z is equal to fxy, the height. That will give you explicit representation. Okay, so that is, sometimes you may be able to project it onto the other plane, yz plane or xz plane, so accordingly your formulas will change. Let us observe one thing here. So this is the unit normal, right? So Rx cross Ry dot k, what is that equal to? The normal was minus hxi minus hyj k, and dot with k is equal to 1, right? That means, and what does this thing represent? A dot b, okay? A dot b equal to 1. That says what? Does it say something about the angle between these two vectors? Yes? They are parallel. No, is equal to 1. Dot product is equal to 1. Right? Dot product also can be written as A dot B is also equal to norm A, norm B into cos of the angle. So the cos of that angle is positive. That means what? The angle must be, cos of that angle is 1, it is positive. That means angle must be acute angle, right? That must be acute angle. So that is one observation that you get from here. Okay, so this is a k coordinate, this is a k vector, and this is Rx cross Ry. What is Rx cross Ry? That is a normal vector. So what I am saying, at any point on the surface, you look at the normal vector and look at the angle with the positive k direction. That angle always is a acute angle. Okay, that is one observation. And I can also write, so this cos of the angle is equal to 1, that means it is equal to this acute angle. It also says, what is that norm of Rx cross Ry? I can compute it from this equation. What is Rx cross Ry? It is 1 over cos gamma, and if that angle is not equal to 0, that means it is equal to secant of gamma, right? And this appears in finding the surface area. This is the integrand in the surface area. So I can write the surface area to be equal to double integral secant gamma dx dy, right? Instead of writing that Rx cross Ry norm dx dy, I can write in terms of the angle, because sometimes it happens it is easier to compute that angle instead of the vector Ru cross Ry or Rx cross Ry. So that says the angle must be acute, and finally that secant gamma must be equal to this. So we get that for explicit representation, when the curve is given by z is equal to hxy, xy belonging to the domain R, this is the surface area. It can also be written as the double integral of secant gamma. Don't think this is a constant. The angle at every stage is going to change. The normal is going to change. K is fixed, but the angle is going to change. It is going to remain acute angle always. Okay. So that is another way of writing. Or sometimes this angle secant gamma can also be computed in terms of the function f, because explicit means what? Z is equal to hxy, which I can also write as capital Fxyz is equal to hxy minus z is equal to 0. From there also I can compute secant gamma. Okay. So another way of writing the same is n dot k, right? That is the angle of cos gamma. And also I can write secant gamma 1 over norm dot k from here. Okay. The same equation, n dot k is equal to cos gamma. So secant gamma is 1 over norm of n dot k. But where n, I can also compute from, if I know, I don't have to know the parametric equation. You see, that is the beauty of this. I don't have to know that, I want only the normal. So even that equation fxyz is equal to 0 is good enough for me to know the normal, right? N dot k. So given a surface in the form of fxyz is equal to a constant, I can directly find this, right? The unit normal, take n dot k and put that value and compute the surface area. That is another way of looking at it, because it is useful sometimes. Okay. So let me just repeat what we have done. That surface area you can write in terms of Ru cross Rv, right? When the explicit parameterization is available, or if the surface is given explicitly as z is equal to hxy, then one way is using this function h and writing the integral, okay, or looking at the angle and computing that integral. Sometimes whichever is useful, accordingly we use that formula. Okay. So I think let me stop here today.